Good evening, everybody, and welcome. My name is Ryan P. Cruz from Santa Barbara Independent, and I'll be the moderator for tonight's forum. We will be talking to both candidates for Santa Barbara County Sheriff. Sheriff is responsible for a jurisdiction spanning over 2,700 square miles, 446,000 people, covering law enforcement responsibilities for the unincorporated areas of the county, stretching from Santa Barbara, Buellton, Carpinteria, Goleta, Solvang, and employs up to 260 law enforcement deputies and 200 custody deputies. They also cover the county jail system and Superior Court. League of Women Voters of Santa Barbara is sponsoring tonight's forum, which is coming to you live from TVSB Studios and streaming online. Thanks to the staff and the volunteers for putting this night together. We hope this forum will inform you, the voters, of the candidates' views on issues of interest to you. It must be noted that the League does not support nor oppose any candidate or political parties. Remember that this race will be decided on the direct primary on June 7th. So I encourage everybody that can vote to make sure that your voter registration is up to date with your current address and information at voterstatus.sos.ca.gov. If it needs to be updated, you can register to vote at registertovote.ca.gov. County voter information is being mailed out now until May 17th, and vote-by-mail ballots should have already been mailed out to each registered voter no later than May 9th. The last day to register to vote in this primary is May 23rd, so do not hesitate to get registered and have your voice heard come June 7th. We've been following the sheriff's race closely and put together a list of questions that we hope have you prepared and well-informed to make your decision in this election. Thanks to Silvia Uribe with TransferPro, who will be providing simultaneous interpretation from English to Spanish. We also ask that both the candidates speak slowly and clearly so Silvia can properly translate. Thanks to TVSB for live streaming this forum on the League's Facebook page and videotaping it for later viewing on Santa Barbara League's website, lwvsantabarbara.org, and of course on independent.com. Please note that the video recording of this forum is property of the League of Women Voters and may not be used without the express permission of the League. Any showing of the video must be used in its entirety without being edited. We have both candidates for Santa Barbara County Sheriff here with us this evening. Current Sheriff since 2007, Bill Brown, and 23-year Sheriff's Department veteran, Juan Camarena. Thank you both for joining us virtually today, and thank you both for running for office. Here's how this forum will work. We'll use the traditional League of Women Voters process and ground rules, which both candidates have agreed to follow. In order to maintain civil and issue-oriented nature
Recording in
of this
progress.
forum, we will not allow candidates to make negative or personal comments about their opponent's character or qualifications. We ask them both to address their own qualifications and vision for this important office and their views on issues that are important to both the community and the Sheriff's Department. First, we'll hear a little from each candidate. You both will have a brief opening statement up to 3 minutes before we continue the main portion of the forum. During the main portion, I'll ask each candidate a minute and a half, or give each candidate a minute and a half to answer 12 questions. I ask that each answer be focused on the question, so feel free to answer briefly but stay on subject, as we have plenty of questions to get through in our allotted time. At the end, each candidate will have an opportunity to make a closing statement of up to 3 minutes, where you'll be able to address anything you feel like we may have missed. So without further delay, let's go ahead and get started. First, we'll go to the new candidate, Juan Camarena.
Okay, first, I want to thank the Santa Barbara Independent and the League of Women Voters for putting this forum together. Santa Barbara County law enforcement is changing, and it needs to evolve to meet today's challenges, such as the rise of violent crime, the perceived lack of trust between the community and law enforcement, and the lack of innovative approaches in the use of technology to assist with the chronic understaffing, transparency, and accountability. The Sheriff's Office needs a qualified leader that not only understands the department, but understands the diverse communities throughout Santa Barbara County. I'm running for sheriff to rebuild the trust between the community and law enforcement. reduce crime, improve our technology to keep ourselves accountable, and be more transparent, and make the Sheriff's Office proactive, efficient, and innovative so we can meet today's and tomorrow's challenges. I'm running on 3 pillars: community, vision, and accountability. That is what we need to evolve, rebuild trust, reduce crime, innovate, and be more transparent and accountable. I currently serve as a sheriff's lieutenant. I've been with the sheriffs for over 23 years. My current assignment, I manage the Criminal Investigation Bureau and the Forensics Bureau. I also, as a collateral assignment, I'm one of the lieutenants that manage our SWAT team. I started working in the jail, then patrol the streets throughout Santa Barbara County from Carpinteria to Santa Maria. I promoted to detective. I became a narcotics detective, then a major crimes detective, promoted to sergeant, went back to patrol, got transferred to the Human Resource Bureau as the HR sergeant, then promoted to lieutenant and became the HR lieutenant. I was then transferred to the Isla Vista Foot Patrol Station as the station commander. And about a year ago, I got transferred to the Criminal Investigation Bureau, which is my current assignment. As a collateral assignment, I've been on the SWAT team for about 20 years. I started as an operator, team leader, and now I'm one of the team lieutenants. Prior to joining the Sheriff's Office, I served in the United States Marine Corps. I did 4 years active duty. And after 9/11, I reenlisted in the Marine Reserve and completed my service in 2004. I have a bachelor's degree in public administration, a master's degree in communication. I speak, write, and read Spanish. I've been endorsed by the Deputy Sheriff's Association, the Santa Barbara County Firefighters Association, Santa Barbara Police Officers Association, and other elected officials from the city of Carpinteria, city of Santa Barbara, city of Solvang, and also been endorsed by former Sheriff Jim Thomas. I can bridge the gap and reach out to those who historically haven't trusted our department to come forward to report crimes and seek our help. I want to be the sheriff for all of Santa Barbara County. Thank you.
Thank you, Juan. Now let's hear from current Sheriff Bill Brown.
Well, thank you, Ryan, and hello, everyone. Good evening. I'm Sheriff Bill Brown, and I am here tonight asking for your vote on or before June the 7th. I am running for re-election because there is a pressing need in Santa Barbara County for a sheriff coroner with proven executive leadership skills, integrity, and stability. These uncertain times call for a county chief law enforcement officer with a proven understanding of the many and complex challenges that are inherent to being the sheriff. With 15 years of experience as your sheriff, I am someone who possesses certain qualifications that can only be born of experience in that role. I love my job, and I still look forward to going to work each and every day. I've always held my staff accountable for their actions and myself accountable for my actions, but I have also ensured that my staff are recognized and rewarded for their extraordinary accomplishments, and that they receive top-notch training, technology, and equipment to help them do their job. I've instituted numerous reforms and made sure the Sheriff's Office has adapted to changing times. But I've also defended the men and women of the Sheriff's Office when they have been unjustly criticized or attacked. I have a proven record of keeping my campaign promises and have consistently demonstrated integrity, professionalism, compassion for others, and a quest for excellence in all that I do and in all that we do as a Sheriff's Office. I've been a strong proponent for professionalism and ensuring that the Sheriff's Office has been on the cutting edge when it comes to selecting employees who will uphold the nobility of the law enforcement profession. For the last 15 years as your sheriff, I've been a reform-minded leader who's kept the sheriff's office ahead of the times, incorporating the latest technology and proven programs. I'm also a leader who has shaped a culture of service to and compassion for others. The expectation of the humane treatment and reform of inmates who are in the custody and care of our agency has been clear, and I have provided and asked for better treatment and care of mentally ill and substance addicted people. To that end, I currently serve and have for the past 12 years as a commissioner on the state of California's Mental Health Services Oversight and Accountability Commission, working to distribute funding obtained through the Mental Health Services Act to California's counties. I was appointed to that commission by Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger and reappointed by Governor Jerry Brown. I also have a long history of leadership to our profession at the state and national level, previously having served as the president of the California Police Chiefs Association and the California State Sheriff's Association. In fact, I'm the only person who has ever been elected by peers to both of those offices. In February of this year, I was voted by my fellow sheriffs as the vice president of the Major County Sheriffs of America, the MCSA. This organization represents the 113 sheriffs of America's largest counties, who collectively protect and serve over 130 million Americans. We seek to educate and foster relationships with legislators, government agencies, and stakeholders while proactively identifying relevant issues and developing and implementing innovative law enforcement and detention training. We come together as sheriffs to address the most pressing issues that we face in our communities, our states, and in our nation. Thank you again for inviting me here this evening, and I look forward to answering your questions.
Thank you both for your opening statements. And now we'll start with our 12 questions. So we'll start with you, Sheriff Bill Brown. With the opening of the brand new North County Jail, state-of-the-art brand new North County Jail, there have been some questions about the conditions back at the main jail, specifically with access to health care for those incarcerated there, mold problems, and supervision issues. What would you do if elected to another term to address these issues, and what does the future look like for the main jail?
And I'm sorry, I just missed the second part of that. Did you say something about mold problems?
Mold problems and supervision issues.
But mold, M-O-L-D?
M-O-L-D, yes.
Okay. So, well, first of all, as you indicated, the Northern Branch Jail is now open and operational. It is a state-of-the-art facility that is designed with rehabilitation and reentry of inmates in mind, coming back into the community, as 98% of the inmates who enter our jail will return to the community. And we want to make sure that they do so in a way that provides a positive impact to the community instead of a continuing destructive impact in the form of crime. With respect to the South Jail, the main jail, which is located here in the south part of our county, it's a jail that is more than 50 years old. It has really outlived its shelf life in many ways. And it requires a pretty major facelift. And we are in the process of actually designing and working with a firm to do a repurposing and a rehabilitation of that facility. That will be a longer, ongoing project that we will be involved in for the next few years. And it is, it has to be done. It is, we have parts of it that are not ADA compliant, and it is not nothing like the Northern Branch Jail. It's a very archaic facility, linear design, and the reality is that it is not the best design. However, there is no difference in the health care that is provided in the North or the South jails. We have a contractor, WellPath, that provides excellent health care to all of our inmates, regardless of where they are housed. And in terms of issues with respect to mold, you know, we have, I'm sure there's probably been some mold here and there somewhere in the jail. As I say, it's old and it's not a great modern facility, but there has not been any widespread mold issue or anything that has caused a problem, a healthcare problem, or an issue that's come about as a result of that. So although the facility itself leaves a lot to be desired and really was the impetus of why we had to build another jail in the North County as well, the treatment that inmates receive in the jail is stellar. It is still the same level of treatment that's received in the Northern Branch Jail, and that's from not only our staff, but our contract healthcare staff as well, who provide not only healthcare, but mental health care in the jail as well.
Thank you, Sheriff Brown. And Juan, same question to you. If elected to your first term, what would you do to address these issues at the South Jail? And what does the future look like for that main jail? You're muted again, I'm sorry.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
First, we have to look at the jail at its current state right now. And we have to look at where we want to take this jail, not for the next 5 years, but the next 30, 40 years. How is how jails are going to function? We need to make sure that we design, if we're going to redesign or rebuild that jail to improve it, we need to make sure we have a plan as it relates to what are the things that we're going to do to the jail that are going to provide that services that the inmates are going to need. And also, not only the services, but what is the ultimate goal as it relates to incarceration? You know, we have to look at the North Branch Jail, how many beds we have, and also we have to look at the South Jail and see how many beds we have, and what is the ultimate goal as it relates to housing any inmates. But we have to look at how can we improve that jail, not only what's going to work for us in 5 years, but how it's going to last. What we do now, that was going to last for 50 years. This might be the only opportunity that we can, as my opponent was saying, you know, they're working with a group, but we need to make sure that whatever design we come up with, it's going to last the changing of times from now to about 30 to 40 years.
Thank you, Juan. And we'll stick with you for the next question, and we'll stick with the jail. So during the pandemic, we were able to drop the population down to about 550. That was with looking to divert nonviolent offenders. And what are your views on the use of cite and release and other diversion programs for nonviolent offenders, both charged with misdemeanors and felonies? And what do you think the population should be kept, and do you think the population should be kept closer to those pandemic numbers?
Well, it's going to be very difficult to really put a number to what cap does a jail has to have. The overall goal is for law enforcement to start collaborating with other departments, other organizations, nonprofit organizations, to make sure that those low-level offenses, that those low-level nonviolent misdemeanors, how can those individuals get the help they need, so we law enforcement don't have to come across and have them go through the same cycle of getting arrested and getting put into jail. So to answer your question, those numbers are very, can't stay at a specific number or can't dictate a specific number, but what we have to do is continue being proactive and working with other departments and making sure that those individuals that are constantly in the revolving door are getting the help they need, to make sure that when we come in contact, we're not coming in contact to issue a citation, but actually just having a normal conversation and kind of doing more of a follow-up to make sure that individual is going in the right direction.
Thank you. And Bill, same to you. What are your views on the use of cite and release and other diversion programs for nonviolent offenders, both charged with misdemeanors and felonies? And do you think the population should be kept closer to those pandemic numbers?
Well, Ryan, I want to frame this with a little background. When I became sheriff in 2007, the average population in the jail fluctuated between 1,150 and 1,250 people at any given time. There were triple bunks. There were a plethora of unrated beds in the jail. Inmates were sleeping on temporary beds that were on the floor. It was there was a struggle, a multi-year struggle with jail overcrowding that I was faced with when I became sheriff. And it was one of my campaign promises to do something about it. And the campaign promise that I delivered was building the Northern Branch Jail, which is doing the most to be able to address that problem, and has already allowed us to move inmates out of some of the most archaic type of housing areas that we have in our jail. To answer your question about the numbers of people in jail, it's important to remember this, that a jail has a capacity, but it also has an ideal number of inmates that would be in it, that would be no more than a certain percentage, just like a hotel. You never want a hotel to be 100% full all the time. A jail is designed in such a way that ideally it should be populated with no more than 85% of its maximum capacity. So let's say you have a population of 1,000 people in the jail, a capacity of 1,000 people in the jail. Ideally, you should not have a population of any more than 850. And that's because of classification issues, being able to move people around who are incompatible, who shouldn't be housed together, who are vulnerable, a variety of different reasons for that. The reality is that we have got our jail population down substantially. As I mentioned when I first came here, it was not uncommon to have over 1,200 people in the jail. When we got to the point pre-pandemic, we were at about 800 to 850 people. We had taken steps and done a lot of things to reduce the population of the jail. And we also had kind of a double whammy because we had the state, through criminal justice realignment, all of a sudden now start sending inmates who were felons to serve their time in jail. Whereas previously the highest amount of time anybody could serve in jail was a year. The reality was we now have anyone who's a non-sexual, non-violent, or so-called non-serious offender can be sentenced to serve their time in jail and can be there for there is no limit to the amount of time short of a life sentence. We've had people that have been sentenced to 22 years for drug transactions, for example, that have been sent to our jail. Now, they typically won't serve that much. They will, just like being in prison, will get credits and will end up being discharged earlier than that. But it is completely changed the way the jail operates and who's in it. And so as far as the citation issue, we always look for alternatives to jail and diverting people from jail, but they have to be effective and accountable programs.
Thanks, Bill. And sticking with you, Bill, in terms of public safety, it seems like there's two big issues that face the city, and some say have a large impact on the crime rate, and that's homelessness and drug use. As sheriff, what type of programs and policies do you see as addressing both the cycle of homelessness and increased danger of fentanyl in these streets?
Well, thank you. Let me address homelessness first. Homelessness is a challenging problem throughout our nation, particularly, and a challenging problem in our state and in our county. And unfortunately, there is no quick, easy, or simple solution to the problem. There are many, many different factors that go into addressing a homeless problem. First and foremost is housing. Having housing that is available to people who are perhaps maybe not even desirous or ready to get into housing initially, but need community-based mental health treatment and or drug treatment to be able to conquer addictions, regain their sobriety, and be able to be competent and take care of themselves. Unfortunately, we've seen so many co-occurring instances of mental illness, homelessness, and drug abuse. It makes it very, very difficult to address this problem, and it's a heartbreaking situation. With respect to the drug problem generally, we have more illicit drugs on our streets now than we have had in the modern era. It is really a tragic situation, and the opioid crisis, particularly with the drug fentanyl, and what is happening with people dying, and I hesitate to use the term overdosing because it's really a poisoning of people with this drug. There are drugs that are coming from Mexico, from super labs that are developed and operated by cartels. These drugs come into our community. They're counterfeit-looking pills that look like real, legitimate opioids that are manufactured for pain relief and for other purposes, and people take these drugs. Some of them take them thinking that they are a Xanax or they are an OxyContin, and end up dying because they have a fatal dose of fentanyl in them. It has gotten to the point where it has become a tragedy in our county of epic proportion. Last year, we had 133 people that died of drug overdoses, and about 60% of those were related to fentanyl in one way or another. And so I have started Operation Opioid, a program in Santa Barbara County that mirrors a successful program that's been followed in several different Florida counties. And I've invited leaders from local government, from law enforcement, from the faith-based community, from the health community, from the education community, from the business and corporate community, to come together, to put a plan together that addresses both the supply and the demand side of the opioid crisis. And you're going to be hearing a lot more about Operation Opioid in the very near future.
Thanks, Bill. And Juan, as sheriff, what type of programs and policies do you see as addressing both the cycle of homelessness and increased danger of fentanyl?
Well, first, being homeless is not against the law. One of the things that we would do is create a homeless outreach program that is comprised of a deputy or law enforcement officer, a fire personnel, other departments like social services, behavioral wellness, nonprofit organizations, and that group will work together. And now, sometimes when we talk about working together, we technically are working in silos and not really working together. But I will get this group together, work under the same roof, and the whole purpose is proactively going out there and working with the homeless communities to make sure that they're getting the services, to make sure they're getting the guidance they need. Right now is very difficult because of the shortage of housing, but this group together could work together and try to make sure that the homeless community is safe and is getting the services it needs, the support it needs to make sure that they are on the right path to getting out of homelessness. As it relates to the opioids, in 2016, the opioids overdose became a concern to law enforcement throughout the United States. One way that I would address the opioid crisis is to implement a data-driven collaboration response model. Some of the strategies would be on this model, it would be doing community outreach to basically send a message that law enforcement is not going to be there to arrest those that have a drug addiction with opioids, but work with them and help them with a diversion direction. But we'll make it clear that we will do enforcement to those that supply fentanyl or these illegal opioids. The other strategy I would do is designate somebody in the department that his whole focus is to monitor how we handle opioids situations anytime we use Narcan or anytime we respond to an opioid overdose, and what things we could do to change how we are doing as it relates to intervention. And the last strategy would be to participate in a multi-agency and cross-disciplinary collaboration to develop a new response that makes efficient use of our limited resources. We don't have all the resources, so that way is working with other organizations and other departments and the community to tackle this together.
Thanks, and we'll stick with you, Juan. It was reported that in the past decade, there have been more than $9 million paid to settle cases alleging misconduct by sheriff's deputies. If elected, do you think you will change anything about the way we train deputies on use of force, or do you think each of these cases were handled as best as they could be?
Well, I don't know too much of the legal lawsuits, but one of the things that I would bring as sheriff is making sure that our department is receiving that training it needs uh, to provide that service that we need to provide to the community. One of the things that I talk about is technology. I want to bring the technology to make sure we conduct performance evaluations on our tactics and procedures. If we get a use of force, we could use that technology to analyze and see if the tactic was appropriate or what things we could change. But not only that, where it's going to give us information to see if what we're teaching or the tactics that is being taught are being effective or not, or if the officer deputy needs more training. So we need to focus on making sure that we are constantly training, not only now the majority of our department, about 60% of our department, has 5 to 7 years experience. So it's very important to make sure that we're constantly providing that training to them. And anytime there is a use of force, doesn't matter how minor it is, that we could look at it, we could provide the training to make sure they are using the right tactics or not, making sure that we change those tactics to be at the forefront of whatever changes or law changes that are occurring where we have to change our tactics or training. Thank you.
Thank you. And Sheriff Brown, if reelected, you think you will change anything about the way we train deputies on use of force, or do you think each of these cases were handled as best as possible? You're muted, sorry, Sheriff.
Sorry about that.
There you go.
Ryan, I don't think that those two questions are mutually exclusive. The reality is that in each of the in all of the cases that you cite, there was the tragic consequence of human life being taken. And anytime that happens, we have a reverence for human life, and we have to examine and take a look and see, is there any other way that this could have been handled? But our critics who would say that, well, you've paid money out, millions of dollars out in lawsuits, and therefore something must be wrong. The reality is that in all of the instances that you cite, the use of force was thoroughly investigated and was found to be justified by the district attorney and an independent, separate organization that looks at the use of force. We also did our own very comprehensive examination and use of force, and we have trained differently and have changed tactics as a result of experience and what has happened in certain cases. So I think that it's very, very important that you always look for what's the latest technology, what's the latest training. We have put a tremendous emphasis on de-escalation. We have a very fine training division in the sheriff's office. We have really one of the only dedicated full-time training units for an agency our size on the Central Coast. And in addition to the standard peace officer standards and training that's received by officers as a result of videos and training programs that are developed by the state post, in addition to that, we do a significant amount of training of our staff. And we have some of the finest training cadre going. They do a great job. And we do constantly training in scenarios, shoot, don't shoot, how to deal with a particular given situation and circumstance. We also have a wide array of alternatives to deadly force. We are always looking and always trying to get the intermediate weapons, the less lethal options that can allow us to take control of a situation without resorting to deadly force. And it is very important that all law enforcement agencies do that, as I say, because no matter what, whether or not a situation is justified, it's still an incredibly tragic situation. And we always have that fine line to balance between protecting the safety of members of the community and officers protecting themselves versus using force, that is going to stop a situation at any given point. And so there, as I say, I believe that the instances that you cited have been handled in a way that was justifiable, and yet that doesn't mean that we can't look at them and say, could there have been an alternative way to handle those situations? And we do that routinely.
And sticking with you, Bill, since 2020, there's been an increased push for civilian oversight in law enforcement. What is your view on the merits and disadvantages of a civilian review board, and what, if any, type of oversight do you see working for our community and for the department?
Well, I think that the calls that have been nationwide have been orchestrated for community oversight, civilian oversight of law enforcement, in many ways have been misguided. I think we have seen that an incident that occurred in Minneapolis that was really kind of a trigger incident, all of a sudden now called for civilian oversight in Santa Barbara, particularly in Santa Barbara City. The reality is that the number of complaints, the number of problems and issues that the Santa Barbara Police Department has in any given year that would rise to the level of having to justify a civilian oversight commission, they are so few, you can probably count them on one hand. And so to develop a commission or a oversight board or group that, at least at the beginning, was estimated to cost anywhere from $600,000 to $900,000 annually, in my estimation, would be not a prudent use of taxpayer money. It is a solution in search of a problem. It's not a necessary thing to have. And we have a variety of different ways that oversight is provided to the sheriff's office. We have the grand jury that oversees what we do and reviews what we do. We have the Attorney General's office that if there's any suspicion that there's some kind of misconduct or issue, they always have the right to investigate whatever is occurring in that regard. And I like to say that the citizens of Santa Barbara County have the ultimate oversight of the sheriff, because I don't have a job if they don't believe that I should be the one that runs the sheriff's office. They, every 4 years, as we're in right now, get the opportunity to vote. And if they believe that there is something wrong, if they believe that we are not doing what we should do, they have the opportunity to change who is the sheriff. That's the ultimate civilian oversight.
And Juan, what is your view on the merits and disadvantages of civilian review board, and what, if any, type of oversight do you see working for our community and for the department?
Yeah, so I believe last year there was an Assembly Bill 1185. It basically says it would authorize a county to establish a sheriff oversight board to assist the Board of Supervisors with those duties as it relates to the sheriff, either by action of the Board of Supervisors or through a vote of county residents. And I always say the people of Santa Barbara County are the ones that are going to elect the sheriff. However, if during my 4-year term, in the middle of the term, if the community feels that I'm not doing my job, I will welcome them to do an oversight board. And I will welcome them to do an oversight board to any elected official. As elected officials, or as the sheriff, I work for the community. And if they feel that they need to provide a board to check to make sure that I'm doing my job in the mid of my term, I will welcome them. I do not see that that's going to be the case when I get elected. However, the disadvantages of creating an oversight board is if the board is comprised of of individuals who have no expertise as it relates to law enforcement or as it relates to any type of criminology or any type of expertise that will give them a better perspective of the jobs, the duties, responsibilities of the sheriff or law enforcement in itself.
And Juan, we'll stick with you for the next question. Santa Barbara is 48% Latino. In what ways is the Sheriff Department working to build community with this Latino population who can sometimes be distrusting of law enforcement? And in what ways can we improve that trust?
Well, one way to improve that trust as sheriff, one of the things that I want to do, I want to create a community engagement board. And this board is going to be comprised of community leaders, business owners, community residents from Carpinteria to the city of Guadalupe. They're going to meet with me, the sheriff, at a monthly basis. And the whole purpose of the meeting is to look at the different challenges the county has as a whole, not what's affecting specific cities or communities, but how the challenges as affecting the county as a whole. We're going to talk about solutions that we could put in place or implement to solve these challenges that is affecting the county as a whole. That way, you will get buy-in from the community, but not only buy-in, but you start rebuilding that trust, and that board is going to be the voice for law enforcement, and that voice is going to be able to provide that positive relationship that I and the board are building into the communities, and that way law enforcement could be able to have those conversations with the different communities throughout. As you asked, what are the things that we're doing? We do community outreach, and for the Hispanic community, sometimes we make sure that we have somebody who speaks Spanish. That's most important. But to be proactive, one of the things, like I mentioned, would be the community engagement board, one way to reach out to the community and rebuild that trust that there is perceived that we have lost through these last several years of these challenging times.
And Sheriff Brown, you've been reelected multiple times. What do you feel like you've done successfully to reach out to the Latino community, and in what ways do you hope to improve that?
Well, Ryan, I think one of the most successful ways that we have shown that we walk the walk is in our hiring. We have a significant number of Hispanic employees, and we are reflective of the community that we serve in the sheriff's office. Not exactly to the degree, because the shift in the Hispanic population has been pretty dramatic and significant in the last 5 years or so. But we nevertheless still have a very significant number of employees in our sheriff's office who are of Hispanic descent. And that is important to be reflective of the community that we serve. And the community that we serve is not of a single race or a single ethnicity. It is a very mixed community. And so when we hire people and particularly reach out and encourage people who are Hispanic, people who are female, people who are of color, of other color, to come aboard as members of our organization. And it is important that we do that. So I think that's first and foremost. I disagree, I take issue with the notion that we have to rebuild trust. I don't think we've ever lost trust with our community, and that includes with members of the Hispanic community. There was a lot of rhetoric that was occurring when SB 54 was enacted as law, and a lot of discussion. And certainly I'm very aware that for some in the Hispanic community, they tend to recognize, or they believe that we as local law enforcement are somehow kind of the same as federal immigration authorities, when we're absolutely not. And we make it very clear to the community that that is not the case. We're not interested in someone's immigration status when they are the victim of a crime. We're not interested in that status, period. The reality is, we as a community and as a society have winked and nodded at the immigration laws for many, many years, and much of our county's economy is actually dependent upon people who work the fields, who work in the service industries and so forth, who many of whom are not documented. So the reality is that the vast majority of the people who come here and work here and live here in Santa Barbara County are law-abiding people who just are hardworking and want a good life for themselves and for their families. And I think it's important that we treat them in such a way that they understand and realize that we are not the federal law enforcement authorities. We are the local law enforcement authorities who are concerned about their safety. And we don't want them to be victimized in any way. And we're here to protect and serve them, just as we are the people that live in any other neighborhood or other area or other community in Santa Barbara County.
All right, and moving on, Bill, we'll stick with you. When you started as sheriff, the department budget was around $80 million. Since then, it's increased steadily to over $170 million for 2020 and 2022, 2023. What can the department do to streamline the budget, specifically in terms of overtime pay and the $80.8 million in custody operations? And what type of budget-related challenges have you faced in your time as sheriff?
Well, in my time as sheriff, I have faced the most difficult financial challenges in the history of our organization. When I was hired, when I was elected, and when I began my term as sheriff in 2007, the sheriff's office was at its zenith. It was at the highest point in terms of staffing that it had ever been. And in the next year and a half or so, the Great Recession hit. And the aftermath of the Great Recession is something that we are still feeling and we have still not recovered from. In the Great Recession, we lost 90 general fund positions in the sheriff's office. And we've only gained back about 10 of those positions. We are still 80 positions down from where we were at our height. Now you say, well, if that's the case, how could the budget have gone up so much? The reality is that inflation and the cumulative effect of inflation has hit our budget. And, you know, it's a very frustrating thing. It's a frustrating thing for the Board of Supervisors. It's a frustrating thing for me that the costs associated with everything from the majority of our budget is driven by personnel, by wages and benefits. But we also see huge increases in everything from healthcare and food for inmates in the jail, and every, you know, the cost of gasoline, the amount of gasoline that is used in our vehicles, for example. I mean, just our fuel bill alone has gone up exponentially from what it was, and so we have seen this increase. The overtime issue is complicated because it's tied to a structural staffing deficit that we still have in the sheriff's office. As I mentioned, these 80 positions, general fund positions that we still do not have. And as a result of that, we have had to trim down pretty much everything in the sheriff's office, and we operate at minimum staffing levels in our jails and in our patrol areas. We operate with reduced numbers of people in our investigative units, and we've had to eliminate support units that were very important, and really ashamed to see us lose some of the units, like our crime prevention unit and our research and development unit, things that really were cutting edge and were important, but in the quest to provide a certain base level of fundamental services, they had, unfortunately, to go. And we still are trying to recuperate and recover from that. What can we do about it? We can do our best to hire and fill positions that we have. If a position is unfilled now, it's even more of a burden on the organization because we don't have sufficient staffing to backfill it otherwise. And so there's a lot of things that we can do, but I think I've run out of my 90 seconds.
Yeah, we'll move on to Juan. So what can the department do to streamline the budget, specifically in terms of overtime pay and the $80.8 million in custody operations?
In regards to overtime, we are down position, and what we have to do is it's going to take some time to recuperate a lot of those positions that we have lost. We're using a staffing model that has been used for over 20 years, and one of the things that we could do to reduce the overtime is identify a new staffing model. We need to analyze how we deploy our resources and figure out what staffing model we should use temporarily while we continue to hire the personnel that we have lost. So one way to reduce the overtime, analyze our cost for service, analyze our services, make those decisions to cut some of the services and focus on our current priority, or one of my current priorities is to reduce this uptick in violent crime and refocus those resources to effectively deploy to deal with this uptick in violent crime. But like I said, you have to change the way we respond to calls. We have to be more efficient by using the technology to allow us to pinpoint where we have to be while continuing to hire the personnel that we need, but at the same time, reaching out to the community to help us to be a partner to be able to get more people to be part of this great organization.
And we'll stick with you, Juan, again. The Santa Barbara Police Department recently transitioned to equipping its field officers with body cams. Do you support the Sheriff's Office equipping deputies with body cameras? And what sort of obstacles have we faced in making this happen?
Yes, I support having body-worn cameras. When I was at the IV Foot Patrol station, all the officers and deputies assigned to the Foot Patrol had a body-worn camera. Before we purchased those cameras for those deputies assigned to the IV Foot Patrol, there were several deputies that were buying their own body-worn cameras. In regards to having body-worn cameras for the rest of the department, to the best of my understanding or to the best of my knowledge, I know that last fiscal year, the county gave us about $900,000 to purchase those cameras. However, somehow that didn't came into fruition. So I'm hoping that this fiscal year, we're able to get body-worn cameras. One of the things that people maybe don't understand is the body-worn cameras in itself are not expensive. What is expensive is the storage issue, how the information is going to be stored. If you're constantly working a 12-hour shift and you respond, let's say, to 10 calls for service, those 10 calls, depending on how long the calls lasted, let's say an hour, you have 10 hours of recording, it has to be uploaded to the storage server, and that's the cost of having the body-worn cameras. Thanks.
And Sheriff Brown, do you support Sheriff's Office equipping deputies with body cameras? And what sort of obstacles have we faced in making this happen?
Well, I absolutely do support body-worn cameras for all of our uniformed deputies. I have asked the Board of Supervisors since 2019 for funding for body-worn cameras. As Juan mentioned, we have had an optional program where deputies can and often do purchase their own body-worn cameras as an interim solution, but we really need them for everyone. And we did get that funding for the body-worn camera program this fiscal year. It's a very, very complex program, and we are underway with preparing for it. And our goal is to have those cameras and distribute them to everyone in July of this year. As mentioned, there's an infrastructure issue that has to be taken care of. We got an additional position that is actually going to be someone who's going to be in charge of actually managing all of this digital evidence that is obtained as a result of the body-worn cameras. So it is it's a very, very large undertaking, but we are there. I will say this, and I think it's important for people to understand this. The Sheriff's Office has been a leader in terms of, we were the first organization in the county that equipped all of our patrol cars with patrol car dash cameras. And to this day, we still have patrol car cameras in every marked vehicle in the Sheriff's Office. And we have developed a system and worked with a company to develop a system that automatically downloads that information so that it's not a cumbersome issue. It's not a matter of taking a download for each specific camera one at a time, that you have to go into a trunk or pull out a camera to download it. It's done automatically. It's a wireless process that when the cars come into a station, they automatically download their video. And it's a very strong system and a good system, which has allowed us to have video for review of incidents that occur anytime they occur at or in front of a vehicle. But the body-worn camera issue is something that is very important. And it's important because the reality is the deputies want body-worn cameras. The body-worn cameras show that they do their job professionally and well 99.5% of the time. And they are really a wonderful tool to be able to show that they are acting professionally and to capture evidence that can be used, that can help prosecute criminals. So very, very much in favor of body cameras.
And staying with you, Sheriff Brown, along similar lines, another recent development among law enforcement agencies is the online data dashboard. Are there plans to provide real-time or daily updated data that can be accessed to the public? Do you feel like this would help with transparency, or do you think that it would be tough to have the manpower to make this happen?
Well, it would be tough if we were doing it on our own, but we are engaged in a project right now with the probation department, where the probation department is actually the lead agency on hosting a criminal justice dashboard for Santa Barbara County. We will be providing them with information from our crime data and from our jail statistics, for example, that will populate that. We currently have a feature on our website that allows people to determine who is in our jail. And so we have a rudimentary amount of that data, but it's important to understand that the Sheriff's Office has really been hamstrung in its ability to obtain, gather, and analyze data. For years, we've been asking for a data unit to have the resources that are equivalent to what exist in the district attorney's office, the public defender's office, the probation department, for example. And finally, this past year, we received funding for a data manager and for a data technician. And we have taken those two people and merged them with our one existing crime analyst and created a data unit within our organization. And we are in the current stages right now of putting together the templates and the figuring out which data we need to be able to extract from our three main automated systems: our jail management system, our records management system, and our computer-aided dispatch system, to be able to extract that and build templates that will allow for that information to be downloaded in such a way that it creates reports that our managers, our command level officers, our executive level officers in the Sheriff's Office can utilize that in decision making to determine where we put our precious resources, for example, or to determine what we need to do if a particular type of statistic seems as though it's getting out of the average. or out of the norm. So it's a great time for our organization to see improvements in our data collection and analysis. And as far as the dashboard is in development right now through the probation department.
And Juan, we'll go over to you. How do you feel about a data dashboard? Do you feel like this would help with transparency, or do you think it'd be tough to have the manpower to make this happen?
I think a interactive dashboard that is available to the public is going to help us with transparency. One of the things that I want to do as sheriff is have an interactive dashboard in our website where it's more of a research dashboard where, let's say you want to know between this month and this month how many people were arrested. And let's say you want to know out of those people who got arrested for driving under the influence, or how many of those people were between 18 and 20. That dashboard that gives you the data, the instant data that, to do research. One of the things that I learned in Isla Vista is that, the community wants data. They want the numbers, and having this interactive dashboard that gives them those numbers, and it gives them the ability to do the research. They can get the data and they can interpret the data. I think it makes us more transparent than if they ask for the data. It takes us a couple of days to provide the data, and we provide what we interpret. This way, it would be kind of like a raw data where they could interpret, and is coming directly from our three major databases.
Thanks, Juan. And we'll stick with you for the next question. So we have contracts with Buellton, Solvang, Carp, and Goleta, and they've openly disputed what they called a complicated accounting method used to calculate their annual contract. And last year went up about 40 to 50%, and they openly disputed that, and it eventually went down to 19 and 20%. Juan, are you worried about not having the experience in dealing with these city leaders to work through these type of large-scale negotiations?
Not worried to deal with the different city leaders. It's understanding the model, the model that we use to provide those initial numbers, or how we are going to do contracts with those cities, is being able to have that conversation if there's any disputes, especially when they're disputing that the amount went 40%. We need to look at and see why did it went up 40%, and did we make the mistake, or that in this case, the auditor controller, because on the deputy sheriff unit model that we're using is similar that what LA sheriff is using to charge and get the actual cost of providing services to a contract city. We need to look at and have those conversations and see who made that error. If we make it, we need to work with our county counterparts and come out with a solution because we made a mistake. However, if the auditor controller, somebody specific in the county made a mistake, again, we have to look at how we are going to make sure that the cities are not impacted by this uptick in costs for police services. Now, however, if all the processes and how the calculations were done were correct, then we have to be able to look at it and say, okay, why did it just went up so much in 1 year? So as a leader, we have to look at and see why is it taking, or why did it took so much, or why did it went up so much overnight? Or if we see that it's going to go that high, we need to give a advance notice to the city saying, hey, based on this model, your cost is going to go up 40% in 1 year or 2 years, and try to work and facilitate a way so they don't feel the impact on their police services.
And Sheriff Brown, with your experience working year in and year out with these cities and these contracts. What can you tell us about these rising costs and what type of obstacles you faced with these cities contracts?
Well, Ryan, I'm going to apologize to you for a moment because I'm only going to be able to really answer this question in the most generic of terms, because we are currently engaged in a process with the cities to try to resolve this issue, and we are going through a mediation process, or about to go through a mediation process. So it really would be improper for me to go into any great detail. I will put some surrounding parameters out there, though, that might shed some light on this. So the sheriff's office, there are 8 incorporated cities in the county, and 4 of them are provided law enforcement service, frontline police service by the sheriff's office. Those 4 are the cities of Carpinteria and Goleta in the South County, and the cities of Buellton and Solvang in the North County. And we have provided those cities with their contract law enforcement, in most cases, ever since they were incorporated. And in the case of the city of Carpinteria, when we actually took the Carpinteria Police Department and merged it, essentially, the sheriff's office absorbed the police department and ended up taking over. Back in the day when that contract and other contracts were put together, they were put together in a very rudimentary way. And the reality is there was not really a full cost recovery that was occurring for the cost of providing those services by the county to the cities. And so this new model that Juan mentioned was adopted, and it is in dispute right now in terms of the model. And it's something that, like I say, I really can't go into any greater detail, other than to say that we're honored to provide frontline law enforcement service for those 4 contract cities. The cities are not happy with the costs. We're not happy with the costs, but they are what they are. And that will be it's being disputed, and it will be resolved one way or the other. But the actual police service that's provided to the communities is something that those communities are very appreciative of and very pleased and satisfied with. It's just the fact that the county, because of its financial issues, is in a position where it can no longer subsidize the cost of providing some of these services to the cities. And I think I should probably leave it right there.
Thanks, Bill. And as we get to our final 2 questions, we're going to look a little bit towards the future. We're going to stick with you, Sheriff Brown. Law enforcement agencies across the country are facing a shortage of applicants for open positions. What has changed in your opinion, and how do we get new applicants interested in working for the department while also providing a track for advancement through the ranks?
Well, I think there are a number of issues that have made it more challenging, as you say, nationwide, not just here in our county, and certainly not just with the sheriff's office. A number of issues that are keeping young people from even considering a career in law enforcement or corrections. And I think that the tragic incident that occurred in Minneapolis was at the forefront of that. I think the protests and the pushback and the national conversation that occurred after that, and quite frankly, some of the vitriolic and vicious attacks against law enforcement that were made, and some of the opinions that were expressed were less than diplomatic and were less than reasonable. And I think that a lot of people thought, why would I want to go into that profession? It's a dangerous profession to begin with. And why would I want to go do something where seemingly I'm not appreciated? The reality is, our people that work in the sheriff's office, whether they work in patrol, whether they work in custody, or whether they're support staff who support both functions, they are appreciated by the majority of people that live in our community. The loud are not the majority. The reality is that people who live here understand and respect the great level of service that the sheriff's office provides. And we are, like everyone, challenged with having fewer applicants now, but we are still able to go through those applicants. We still have only about a 2% hiring rate. So for every 100 applicants, we only hire at the end about 2 people that apply at the sheriff's office. And it's important that we maintain our standards, and it's important that we hire the right people, people who are going to be honorable and upstanding law enforcement and corrections personnel who are going to represent the values and the expectations that the sheriff's office has of its employees in the community and make us proud. And although recruitment is challenging, it is still something that we're getting done. We have a tremendous human resources division that's doing yeoman work. They are doing very creative things in form of recruitment. They are making sure that we have a presence in community colleges, in military bases, seeking the type of applicants that we are after. But at the end of the day, oftentimes the best applicants that come in through word of mouth, come in through people who people within our organization know or come into contact with in the community, and who say, hey, have you ever considered a career in the sheriff's office? And the sheriff's office has so many different opportunities that a career with our organization is like second to none in a law enforcement agency. And it's really that opportunity that we need to capitalize on. And it's important that we have our people out there as acting as our primary recruiters, as it were. And they do that, and we're doing it, but we're just having a struggle just like everyone else is.
And Juan, in your opinion, how do we get new applicants interested in working for the department while also providing a track for advancement through the ranks?
Well, we must look at the current available workforce. There has been a generational shift in the workplace. We must create a more progressive, cultural, that opens the doors to greater employees' flexibility and continue investment in technology and opportunities for upward mobility. During my tenure in the human resources, we were able to achieve a sustained 40% increase in hiring of the sheriff's office employees in 2016 and 2017. When compared with the 5-year average between 2011 and 2015. One of the things that I would do, because I've been in human resources, I've been at the forefront of bringing new ways of recruiting personnel. One of the things that we will implement is a scholarship programs, recruitment campaigns to highlight the real day-to-day aspects of our job, which often vastly different from how law enforcement professionals are viewed. Work with stakeholders in the communities to create new ideas on how to provide ways to make it feasible to live in the county. That's another challenge that we have. It's not cheap to live in the county. A lot of them live outside the county. Develop an orientation program where applicants have an opportunity to witness a training environment firsthand. So give them that exposure to see if that's what they want to do. But also looking more into the future, maybe bring or create new civilian positions where there are people who are interested in law enforcement, but they don't want to be in uniform. They don't want to carry a gun, but they like the crime scene. They like they watch police programs. So bring maybe a civilian investigator position, bring other positions where we could hire people with different expertise that are going to help us with the staffing that we have, but also with time, they will be able to change their mind and become a future deputy. And also use social media, which is a changing environment. The majority of potential candidates grew up with the technology and social media. So that's who we're going to be targeting, the future of the organization. Thank you.
And then we're finally made it to our final question. Thank you both. We'll start with Juan. What do you think the department is doing well? Are there any programs or new developments that you're especially proud of? What are your major goals for the next 4 years?
Well, when I was assigned to the IB Foot Patrol, one of the programs that I spearheaded was the Restorative Justice Program. We knew that the most common call for service was loud music. And one of the ways that we went to try to reduce those calls for service, but also get cooperation and be able to have a relationship with the community, we created this restorative justice program. And basically, anytime a person got a citation for loud music, they got a citation, but also got a pamphlet that showed that if they didn't want the citation to go on the records, they would have to apply or sign up for the Restorative Justice Program. And the Restorative Justice Program had 2 hours, or it was comprised of 2 hours in classroom. And basically in the 2 hours in the classroom, we talked about the offense. We talked about the issues in Isla Vista. We talk about being a good neighbor. We also talk about ways, or how would they handle our different duties and responsibilities, and more of a collaboration and try to learn from them. But not only that, it helped us really have that normal conversation, and we were able to reduce those barriers of communication between the younger community in Isla Vista and the Foot Patrol. That's one of the programs that I've done, and I would want to continue that. The other program when I was in HR was the recruiting team. I spearheaded the recruiting team, one way to have members of the department to work together, to go out, to be out in the community, to go out in the colleges, to go meet at different events, to try to reach out and recruit those individuals that will meet our standards and believe in our values. One of the things that I want to do as sheriff in the next 4 years is create a strategic plan. In my 23 years, we haven't had a strategic plan. I believe a strategic plan is very important, is a roadway towards the future. And having a strategic plan, we're going to be able to identify the internal and external factors that the sheriff's office or the challenges that the sheriff's office is going to deal with in the future. It's just a plan, it's a guide that's going to make sure that we're going in the right direction. Thank you.
Thank you. And moving on to Bill. What do you think the department is doing well? Are there any programs or new developments that you're especially proud of? And what are your major goals for the next 4 years?
There are so many programs and initiatives that I'm proud of that I'm not going to get through them in 90 seconds. But the reality is Santa Barbara Sheriff's Office has initiated some of the most cutting edge law enforcement programs, initiatives, and technologies in the nation. We've done it in a number of key areas. First of all, philosophies. The philosophy of community-oriented policing and the philosophy of direct supervision in our jail are two examples of how we have been on the cutting edge. Programs that we have developed, mental health co-response, crisis co-response is one of the key ones that I'm so proud of. Community resource deputies, school resource deputies, human trafficking unit and detective, enterprise vehicle lease program where we have an alternative to purchasing vehicles that's saving us hundreds of thousands of dollars. Civilianization, where we've taken roles that were traditionally held by sworn personnel and converted them to civilian personnel. Everything from our chief administrative officer position, human resources manager, public information officer, forensic technician, records manager, and sheriff's service technicians, a new position that we've created. We have updated and innovated our recruitment methods, as I mentioned before. We've established a behavioral sciences unit, which addresses not only mental health issues that we respond to and help people in the field through the co-response program, but also developed a wellness program for our own staff that has become a cutting edge program. We've got a cannabis enforcement team that, as a result of the legal allowances in growing cannabis in our county in large numbers, has been very, very instrumental in keeping the trade legal and above board, and also in going after people who would break the law as total rogues that would go after growing marijuana and not doing it through the legal process. In custody, we've seen a huge number of programs as well, inmate programs for education and rehabilitation, remote court hearings, jail-based competency treatment program, medication-assisted treatment program for inmates, tattoo removal program for inmates, continuous quality assurance unit within our custody development. In development, we also have a dog training program and a cat socialization program that is coming very soon. Staff development in a variety of different ways, where we send our people to some of the top training programs in schools and in developing them for future positions. Project management training, going to national conferences, the post-command college. Technology, where we have been innovative. I mentioned in-car cameras, you talked about body cameras. We have a new data center, all of our data, with a new data center now, a redundant data center that covers all of that as well. And the assertion that the department has never had a strategic plan is just not the case. Here's the strategic plan that was developed 2005 by my predecessor, Sheriff Jim Anderson, for 2005 to 2010. And the problem with this is when you take a strategic plan that doesn't take into account the dramatic changes that we have had, for example, the Great Recession, it ends up not really being worth a lot of the paper that it's worked on. And the plan, although it had some good points, it had a lot of ideas in it that were just impractical. A 1,500 bed jail, for example, other things that just in this day and age would not be feasible. We haven't done a formal strategic plan because we have chosen to strategically develop as we go along without the overall plan that is inevitably going to be impacted by the circumstances of the economy and the circumstances of the changes that we have seen so recently. So I could go on and on about the great things that the Sheriff's Office has done and that I'm very, very proud of. One of the most significant is the Narcan program, where sheriff's deputies are now carrying Narcan and administering it out in the field. And since we started that in 2017, a collaborative program with the Behavioral Wellness Department, we have deployed Narcan 80 times in narcotic overdose cases, and we have saved 73 lives as a result of that deployment. So there's a lot of things that have happened. I could go on and on. Automated external defibrillators that have saved people who've had heart attacks. We've done a lot that has not been traditional, and we have been very progressive as a law enforcement agency, and under my leadership, we will continue to be a very progressive law enforcement agency.
And with that, we've reached the end of our questions. I want to thank both the candidates for your honesty and your direct answers to the issues that are important to the voters of Santa Barbara County. And we'll give you each a chance to do a closing statement for a couple minutes. We'll start with you, Bill Brown. So go ahead, we'll give you the floor.
Well, thank you, Ryan. I thank you and the Santa Barbara Independent and the League of Women Voters for organizing tonight's candidate forum and for giving the voters of Santa Barbara County the chance to compare and contrast the candidates for the office of Sheriff Coroner, the Chief Law Enforcement Officer of Santa Barbara County. My highest goals for my this next term in office, are to, number one, preserve public safety and quality of life in Santa Barbara by pursuing the proper balance of law enforcement, crime prevention, and recidivism reduction and rehabilitative efforts. Number two, to expand our efforts to keep mentally ill people out of the criminal justice system or provide them with proper mental health treatment if they must be in jail. And number three, as I mentioned, work with community leaders on Project Opioid, a collaborative approach to developing and enacting a countywide multi-pronged plan to reduce the abuse of opioids and the unacceptable number of overdose deaths that are occurring in our county. I am endorsed for re-election by over 1,000 people from all walks of life and from across the political spectrum. The list includes every current municipal police chief in Santa Barbara County, Santa Barbara County District Attorney Joyce Dudley, 5th District Supervisor Steve Lavignino, Santa Maria Mayor Alice Patino, Lompoc Mayor Janelle Osborne, former Goleta Mayor and current council member Roger Aceves, former Santa Barbara Mayors Helene Schneider and Marty Blum, former Goleta Mayors Margaret Connell, Cynthia Brock, and Eric Onan, many other former mayors and past and present city council members from throughout the county, retired Santa Barbara County Superintendent of Schools Bill Cerrone, Dr. Peter Haslund, the president of the Santa Barbara City College Board of Trustees, Rogelio Flores, retired Santa Barbara County Superior Court Judge, Jim Vizzolini, retired sheriff of Santa Barbara County. The California Police Chiefs Association has endorsed me, as has the California Peace Officers Association, the Santa Ynez Band of Chumash Indians, and Plumbers and Pipe Fitters Local 114. All of these and many, many more of my endorsements can be found at my website, www.billbrown4sheriff.com. I encourage the voters to visit my website and to visit my opponent's website and determine for yourself who is better qualified to lead your sheriff's office in these uncertain times. I want to close this evening by thanking the people of Santa Barbara County for the trust that you have placed in me as your sheriff. I seek your continued support, and I ask for your vote again on or before June 7th, 2022, so that I can continue to lead your Santa Barbara County Sheriff's Office into the future. Thank you.
Thanks, Bill. Now we'll give Juan a chance for the floor. Go ahead, Juan.
Well, thank you. And again, I want to thank Santa Barbara Independent, League of Women's Voters, and everybody who took the time to look at this forum. The sheriff is a position of leadership. I have the leadership abilities to run the sheriff's office by surrounding myself with experts, understanding the importance of collaboration and the ability to recognize emerging and future trends as early as possible to make better decisions. Keeping one eye on the future will help to ensure the sheriff's office have the necessary organizational agility to be successful in the oncoming decades. On June 7th, I asked the residents of Santa Barbara County to vote for me, Juan Camarena, for sheriff. As a leader of the sheriff's office, I'm a forward thinker. I'm going to bring innovative ideas, and I'm going to bring the ideas. They're going to make sure that we go beyond the 21st century. Thank you.
Thank you both. And again, thanks to Santa Barbara Independent, staff here at TVSB, volunteers of League of Women Voters, and Silvia Uribe with TransLPro for the translation services. Thanks to everyone at home and online for tuning in, and we hope that this helped you make a more informed decision as you prepare to vote for our sheriff for the next 4 years. Once again, remember that this video recording of the forum is property of the League of Women Voters and may not be used without the express permission of the League. Any showing of the video must be used in its entirety without being edited. Most of all, please make sure you're correctly registered to vote and that you get out and vote. Your voice matters, and a higher voter turnout will ensure that the winner is the best option for our community. Mail-in ballots will be mailed out by the county no later than May 9th. You can mail them in or drop them off at designated ballot drop-off on June 7th. Information on where you can drop off your ballot and the locations on where you can vote will be included on your ballot. Thanks everyone, and have a good night.